Get your hands where I can see them, now! The scream tore through the silence of the luxury boutique, shattering the calm like a hammer through glass. Officer Sebastian Dalton didn't see a man. He saw a target. He didn't see the receipt on the counter. He saw a crime in progress. He had his gun drawn, his finger twitching on the trigger, drunk on power and prejudice. The suspect? A man calmly buying an engagement ring. Dalton thought he was about to make the arrest of the month. He thought he was untouchable. He had no idea that the man he was shoving against the display case wasn't just innocent. He was the one man with the power to end Dalton's career with a single phone call. The handcuffs clicked. The mistake was made. And then, the wallet opened. Easton Oakley adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke charcoal suit. Though the movement was purely habitual, the fit was perfect. He leaned over the glass counter of Whitmore and Company, the city's most exclusive jeweler, examining the diamond under the loupe. It was a radiant cut, 3 carats, flawless. It was perfect. It was for Gemma. "It catches the light beautifully, doesn't it, Mr. Oakley?" Noah Whitmore, the store owner, asked. Noah was a man of nervous energy, constantly polishing the glass, but he had a good heart and an eye for quality. He had known Easton for 3 years, ever since Easton had moved to the city, though Noah, like most people, knew Easton as a high-end security consultant, a vague cover for his true reality. "It's the one, Noah," Easton said, his voice a deep, calm baritone. He smiled, thinking of Gemma Sterling's reaction. She was the love of his life, a woman who had stood by him through the darkest cases and the longest nights. "She's going to scream. In a good way, I hope," Noah chuckled, tapping away on the tablet register. "That will be $48,500. I've applied the friends and family discount, of course." Easton pulled a sleek black titanium card from his wallet. It wasn't a standard bank card. It was government-issued, linked to a secure credit union used by high-level federal agents, though it bore no flashy insignias. Just a name and a chip. "Run it," Easton said. The bell above the door chimed. The heavy oak door swung open, letting in the humidity of the city streets and the heavy footsteps of authority. Officer Sebastian Dalton walked in, thumbs hooked into his duty belt. He was a man who wore his uniform like a suit of armor, believing it made him invincible. He was broad-shouldered, with a buzz cut and eyes that constantly scanned for threats or opportunities to assert dominance. Trailing behind him was Officer Yale Noble, a rookie who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Noble was young, fresh out of the academy, and still possessed a conscience that Dalton was trying hard to break. Easton didn't turn around. His situational awareness, honed by 15 years in the Bureau, had already cataloged the reflection in the glass. 2 officers, standard patrol beat, nothing to worry about. "Afternoon, Noah," Dalton announced, his voice booming unnecessarily loud in the quiet shop. He ignored the other 2 customers, an elderly white couple browsing watches, and zeroed in on Easton's back. "Officer Dalton," Noah said, his smile faltering slightly. "What can I do for you?" "Just doing a perimeter check. There's been reports of credit card fraud in the district, hitting high-end spots." Dalton walked closer, his boots heavy on the marble floor. He stopped 3 feet from Easton. Easton remained relaxed, watching Noah process the transaction. The machine beeped, approved. "Here's your receipt, Mr. Oakley, and—" "Hold on," Dalton interrupted. He stepped into Easton's personal space, the smell of stale coffee and aggression radiating off him. "That's a big purchase for a Tuesday afternoon." Easton finally turned. He looked Dalton in the eye, his expression unreadable. Easton stood 6'2", an inch taller than the officer, and held himself with a quiet lethality that usually signaled to predators that they had engaged the wrong prey. "Is there a problem, officer?" Dalton sneered. He took in Easton's appearance. Yes, the suit was expensive, but Dalton didn't see success. He saw a black man with an expensive suit and a titanium card, and in Dalton's warped worldview, That math didn't add up to legal. "We've had reports," Dalton said, his hand resting casually, too casually, near his holster. "Stolen cards, identity theft. You know the drill." "I don't, actually," Easton said, his voice level. "I've just purchased this ring. The transaction cleared. I have the receipt. Have a good day, officer." Easton reached for the velvet bag Noah was holding out. "I didn't say you could leave," Dalton barked, stepping to block Easton's path. The air in the store shifted instantly. The elderly couple froze. Noah Whitmore looked terrified. "Officer Dalton," Noah stammered. "Mr. Oakley is a regular customer. I can vouch for—" "Quiet, Whitmore," Dalton snapped, not looking away from Easton. "Criminals groom store owners all the time. Build trust, then hit you for 50 grand. I'm doing you a favor." He turned his attention back to Easton. "Let me see the card. And your ID." Easton sighed, a slow, controlled exhalation through his nose. He knew this game. He taught courses on de-escalation at Quantico. He knew that any sudden movement would give Dalton the excuse he was desperate for, but he also knew his rights. "Am I being detained, officer?" Easton asked calmly. "Because unless I am, I'm under no obligation to show you my identification." Dalton's face reddened. His authority was being challenged, and for a man like Sebastian Dalton, that was a capital offense. "You're acting suspicious. Failure to comply is probable cause in my book. Hand over the ID or we do this the hard way." "Officer Noble," Easton said, shifting his gaze to the rookie standing by the door. "You're observing this, correct? I am a paying customer, exiting a store with a receipt. Your partner is initiating a stop without reasonable articulable suspicion. That's a Fourth Amendment violation." Noble shifted uncomfortably. "Dalton, maybe we should just—" "Shut it, Yale!" Dalton shouted. He stepped in close, chest to chest with Easton. "You think you're a lawyer? You think a fancy suit protects you? I run this beat. I say who walks and who doesn't." Easton looked at Dalton with pity. "You're making a mistake. A career-ending one." "Is that a threat?" Dalton hissed. "Did you just threaten a police officer?" "It's an observation," Easton replied. "That's it," Dalton growled. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a 1016 in progress at Whitmore's. Suspect is belligerent, refusing to ID possible large-scale fraud. Send backup." Easton shook his head slightly. "You just escalated a non-event into a scene. Why?" "Because people like you don't buy rings like that with honest money," Dalton whispered, low enough so only Easton could hear. The mask was off. It wasn't about the card. It was about the color of the hand holding it. Easton's eyes hardened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "People like me?" "Yeah," Dalton smirked. "Thugs in costumes." The tension in Whitmore and Company was thick enough to choke on. Outside, the flash of blue lights reflected against the store's pristine glass windows. Passers-by were stopping, pressing their faces to the glass, sensing the drama unfolding. Easton remained perfectly still. He knew that Dalton was waiting for a twitch, a flinch, a raised voice, anything to justify physical force. Easton's hands hung loosely at his sides, open and visible. "Turn around," Dalton commanded, his hand now firmly gripping his baton. "Hands on the counter. Spread your legs." "I am not resisting," Easton stated clearly, his voice projected enough for the store's security cameras to pick up the audio. "But I am not consenting to a search. I have committed no crime." "I said turn around." Dalton shoved Easton hard. Easton stumbled slightly but caught his balance. The physical contact was the line. Dalton had crossed it. Noah Whitmore came around the counter, his hands trembling. "Officer, please, stop! This is Easton Oakley, he's—" "Back off, Whitmore, or I'll charge you with obstruction," Dalton roared, spinning to point a finger at the store owner. "Sit down and shut up." While Dalton was distracted yelling at Noah, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't police. It was a woman. Gemma Sterling walked in, her smile fading instantly as she took in the scene. She was stunning, a high-powered defense attorney with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. She saw the police lights outside and had rushed in, recognizing Easton's car. "Easton?" she called out, dropping her purse. "Stay back, Gemma," Easton said calmly. "Do not come closer." Dalton whipped his head around. "Who is this? Your accomplice?" "She's my fiancée," Easton said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. "And you will speak to her with respect." Dalton laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Fiancé? Right. Probably the mule for the money." He looked at Gemma. "You're interfering with a police investigation, lady. Step outside." "I am an attorney," Gemma said, her voice like steel. She pulled her phone out and immediately hit record. "And I am representing this man. Officer, state your name and badge number immediately." Dalton hesitated. A lawyer. That complicated things, but his ego was too inflamed to back down now. He had an audience outside. He had his rookie partner watching. He had to win. "I don't answer to you," Dalton spat. He turned back to Easton. "You're coming with me. We'll sort out your fake IDs downtown." "I'm not going anywhere with you until a supervisor arrives," Easton said. "I am the supervisor," Dalton yelled. He lunged, grabbing Easton's left arm and twisting it behind his back with excessive force. Easton felt the torque on his shoulder. With his training, Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu, he could have flipped Dalton over the counter in 2 seconds flat. He could have disarmed him and neutralized the threat before Officer Noble even blinked. The muscle memory twitched in his limbs, begging to be released. "No," Easton told himself. "If I fight, I'm just another violent suspect on the news. I have to win this the right way. The painful way." "I am not resisting," Easton repeated through gritted teeth as Dalton slammed his chest against the glass counter. The impact rattled the display cases. "Gemma, keep recording." "I've got it all, Easton," Gemma said, her voice shaking with rage but the camera hand steady. "Officer Dalton, I am witnessing you use excessive force on a compliant subject." "He's tensing up. Stop resisting," Dalton screamed, reciting the standard lines to cover his aggression. He kicked Easton's legs apart, hard. "Noble, get over here! Help me cuff him!" Officer Noble walked forward slowly. "Dalton, he's not fighting back. Maybe we should just run his name through the system first." "I said cuff him!" "Cuff." Dalton sweated, his face red and veins bulging. "He's a flight risk." "A flight risk?" Gemma scoffed. "He's buying a ring. He's trying to give you money." The crowd outside had grown. Phones were pressed against the glass. A young woman, Kayla Ryder, was live-streaming the whole thing to Instagram. The feed was already blowing up. The caption read, "Cop attacking innocent man at Whitmore's. Share this now." Dalton finally managed to wrench Easton's other arm back. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into Easton's wrists. "You're under arrest," Dalton panted, looking triumphant. "Disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and suspicion of fraud." Easton rested his forehead against the cool glass of the counter. He took a deep breath. The humiliation was burning, but the trap was set. "Check my back pocket," Easton said softly. "What?" Dalton barked, yanking Easton upright. "My wallet," Easton said, turning to face Dalton. His eyes were cold, devoid of fear. "You wanted ID. It's in my back pocket. The leather badge holder." Dalton sneered. "Finally giving up the fakes, huh?" Dalton reached into Easton's pocket and pulled out a slim, black leather bifold. He expected to find a fake license, maybe a stack of stolen credit cards. He flipped it open. He froze. Time seemed to suspend in the jewelry store. The hum of the air conditioning unit became a roar in Sebastian Dalton's ears. He looked at the object in his hand. It wasn't a driver's license. It was a gold shield. Not the silver of the local PD, but the heavy, intricate gold of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Below the shield, the ID card didn't just say Special Agent. It read, "Easton Oakley, Special Agent in Charge, SAC, Internal Affairs/Public Corruption Task Force. Dalton blinked. He read it again. Public Corruption Task Force. The blood drained from Dalton's face so fast it left him dizzy. He looked up at Easton. The man in the handcuffs wasn't a thug. He wasn't a fraudster. He was a high-ranking federal agent. And not just any agent. Easton Oakley was the head of the division specifically tasked with hunting down dirty cops. "Read it out loud," Easton commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a judge passing a sentence. Dalton's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His hands started to shake. "Officer Noble," Easton said, shifting his gaze to the rookie. "Step forward." Noble looked at the badge in Dalton's hand, then at Easton. His eyes went wide. Oh my God." "Read it, Noble," Easton said. It says Special Agent in Charge. FBI," Noble stammered. "Take these cuffs off me," Easton said. It wasn't a request. Dalton took a step back, clutching the badge as if it were a grenade. This is fake. It has to be fake. You printed this." "You really want to double down right now?" Easton asked, tilting his head. "You want to add destruction of federal property and kidnapping of a federal officer to your list? Because right now, you're looking at assault, battery, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and false imprisonment." "It's fake," Dalton shouted, his voice cracking. He was panicking. His world was crumbling, and his brain was frantically trying to reject the reality. "Dispatch! I've got a suspect with forged federal credentials." Gemma stepped forward, the phone still recording. "You are digging your own grave, officer. That is a federal crime you are committing right now by withholding his identification." Easton stared at Dalton. "Sebastian Dalton. Badge number 492. 3 excessive force complaints in the last 2 years. 1 suspension for racial profiling that was swept under the rug by your union rep. I know who you are, Dalton. I've been building a file on your precinct for 6 months." Dalton's eyes bulged. How do you know that?" "Because I'm the investigation," Easton said coldly. "And you just walked right into the spotlight." The sound of sirens grew louder outside. Not just patrol cars this time. Black SUVs were screeching to a halt, mounting the curb. The cavalry had arrived. Easton had triggered the silent distress signal on his watch the moment the cuffs touched his skin. The door to the shop flew open. 4 men in tactical gear with FBI emblazoned on their vests stormed in, rifles at the low ready. Behind them walked Oliver Donovan, the police chief, looking pale and terrified. "Drop the weapon!" one of the agents screamed at Dalton. Dalton dropped his baton. He looked at the FBI agents, then at the chief, then at Easton. "Chief?" Dalton squeaked. He was resisting. I was just—" Chief Donovan ignored him. He walked straight to Easton. "Get those cuffs off him now!" Donovan barked at Noble. Noble scrambled, his keys fumbling in the lock. The mechanism clicked, and the metal fell away. Easton rubbed his wrists, red marks already forming against his dark skin. Easton didn't look at his team. He didn't look at the chief. He walked slowly toward Dalton. Dalton shrank back, hitting the display case. The bully was gone. The predator had become the prey. Easton reached out and plucked his badge from Dalton's trembling fingers. He tucked it back into his pocket, then smoothed his suit jacket. "You have the right to remain silent," Easton said, his voice deadly calm. "But I really hope you don't. I want to hear every excuse you have." He turned to the FBI tactical team leader. "Agent Miller." "Sir." "Arrest this man," Easton pointed at Dalton. "Federal charges, violation of Title 18, Section 242, and secure the CCTV footage from the store immediately." "Yes, sir." As the agent swarmed Dalton, forcing his hands behind his back and slamming him against the same counter he had used on Easton, Easton turned to Gemma. She lowered her phone, tears of adrenaline and relief in her eyes. "You okay?" "I am now," Easton said. He looked at the engagement ring sitting on the velvet pad, forgotten in the chaos. He picked it up. He looked at the chaos around him. Dalton being read his rights, Noah Whitmore giving a statement to an agent, the crowd outside cheering as the bad cop was led away. "Not exactly the proposal I planned," Easton murmured. Gemma laughed, a wet, choked sound. "It's certainly memorable." Easton looked at Officer Noble, who was standing in the corner, looking like he was about to vomit. "Noble," Easton said. The rookie jumped. "Sir, I didn't mean to." "You didn't stop him," Easton said, his voice hard. "You knew it was wrong. I saw it in your face. But you stayed silent. Silence is complicity." He's my senior officer. I'm on probation," Noble stammered. "That's an explanation," Easton said. "Not an excuse. You have a choice to make, kid. You can be a cop, or you can be a thug. Today you were a spectator. Decide fast, because I'm coming for the rest of the department next." Easton turned back to the chief of police. "Oliver, we need to talk. My office. 1 hour." "Easton, I had no idea," the chief pleaded. "Dalton is a bad apple. We didn't know—" "Stop," Easton cut him off. "The bunch is spoiled, Oliver, and I'm throwing it out." Easton took Gemma's hand and led her toward the door. The cameras flashed as they exited. The world was watching, and Easton Oakley was just getting started. But the nightmare wasn't over. Dalton was in cuffs, but he had friends, dangerous friends. And as Easton walked out, he didn't notice the man in the crowd. A shadowed figure in a gray hoodie, watching not with curiosity, but with calculated hate. Dalton wasn't just a racist cop. He was the tip of an iceberg that went much deeper than Easton realized. The hard karma had hit Dalton, but the backlash was coming for Easton, and it was going to get violent. The adrenaline from the jewelry store had barely faded when Easton walked into the interrogation room at the FBI field office. The room was sterile, cold, and smelled of lemon cleaner and fear. Sebastian Dalton sat on the other side of the metal table, handcuffed to the chair. He looked smaller now, stripped of his uniform, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed violently with his flushed, angry skin. But Dalton didn't look defeated. He looked smug. Easton sat down opposite him, placing a thick file folder on the table. He didn't open it immediately. He just stared. "You're wasting your time, Oakley," Dalton sneered, leaning back as far as the chains would allow. "You think you're the first Fed to try and take a bite out of the 12th precinct? You'll break your teeth." "I'm not just taking a bite, Sebastian," Easton said softly. "I'm swallowing you whole. I have the video. I have the witness testimony. I have you on federal civil rights violations. You're looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Minimum." Dalton laughed. "You have a video of a rough arrest. Big deal. I feared for my safety. I saw a metallic object. It's my word against yours." "It's your word against a special agent in charge," Easton corrected. "And who do you think the jury will believe in this city?" Dalton shot back. "We own this city. The judges, the prosecutors, they all eat at the same table." Before Easton could respond, the heavy steel door buzzed and swung open. A woman strode in. She was dressed in a suit that cost more than a patrol car, her heels clicking rhythmically on the concrete floor like the ticking of a bomb. She had ice-blonde hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that could freeze water. Willow Chambers, the president of the Police Benevolent Association, the union. She was the shadowed figure Easton had sensed but never seen. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was the most powerful woman in local law enforcement, the gatekeeper who decided which cops got fired and which ones got promoted. "Interview over," Willow announced, slamming a hand down on the table. She didn't look at Dalton. She locked eyes with Easton. "My client is invoking his Fifth Amendment right to counsel, and I am that counsel." Easton stood up slowly, towering over her, but Willow didn't flinch. "He's already been processed, Willow. He's in federal custody." "For now," Willow said, her voice smooth and venomous. But I've just filed a motion for an emergency hearing. We're arguing jurisdiction. You arrested a uniformed officer on duty for following standard operating procedure. This is a local matter, Agent Oakley. You're overreaching. He assaulted a federal officer, Easton said, his jaw tightening. He detained a suspect who refused to identify himself, Willow countered effortlessly. A suspect who happened to be a federal agent baiting a trap. That's entrapment, Easton. And I'm going to paint you as an angry radical agent with a vendetta against the thin blue line. She leaned in closer, dropping her voice to a whisper. You think you won today because you got some likes on Instagram? You started a war, and unlike you, we don't play by the rules. Easton looked past her to Dalton, who was grinning like a schoolboy who had just been saved from detention by his rich mother. Get him out of here, Easton said to the guard at the door, disgusted. As they led Dalton away, Willow paused at the door. Watch your back, Easton. Accidents happen, cars crash, houses catch fire, people disappear. Is that a threat, Willow? Easton asked, pulling out his phone. Because I'd love to add witness intimidation to the RICO case I'm building. Willow smiled, cold and devoid of humor. It's not a threat, Agent Oakley. It's a weather forecast. Easton waited until the door clicked shut before he let his composure crack. He slammed his fist against the two-way mirror, spiderwebbing the glass. They weren't scared. They were emboldened. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Elijah? It's me. I need you. Now. 3 hours later, Easton pulled his black SUV into the driveway of his secluded modern home in the hills. He needed to decompress. He needed to see Gemma. But as he killed the engine, the hair on the back of his neck stood up. The front door was ajar. Gemma! Easton yelled, drawing his service weapon, a custom Glock 19, and sprinting toward the house. He cleared the doorway, moving with the fluid precision of a man who had breached 100 compounds. Gemma! The living room was tossed, cushions slashed, the 80-inch TV smashed. The vase with the fresh lilies he had bought yesterday lay in shards on the hardwood floor. Easton! The voice came from the kitchen. Easton spun, gun raised, but lowered it instantly. Gemma was standing by the kitchen island, shaking, clutching a kitchen knife. Standing between her and the back door was a mountain of a man, Elijah Oakley. Elijah was Easton's older brother, a former Navy SEAL turned private military contractor. He was 2 inches taller than Easton and built like a tank, with scars on his arms that told stories of wars most people didn't know existed. I got here 5 minutes ago, Elijah rumbled, his voice like gravel. Found 2 guys trying to force the back slider. They saw me and ran. Easton holstered his weapon and rushed to Gemma, pulling her into a crushing hug. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? No, Gemma sobbed into his chest. I came home early. I heard glass breaking. I called Elijah because I knew you were in debrief. Easton looked at his brother over Gemma's head. Elijah's face was grim. They weren't burglars, East, Elijah said, walking over to the broken window. He picked up something from the floor. Burglars don't leave these. He held up a dead rat. Tied around its neck was a blue ribbon. A message, Easton whispered. A rat for a rat. This is Willow Chambers, Easton said, his voice trembling with rage. She told me accidents happen. This wasn't an accident, Elijah said. This was a probe. They were testing your perimeter, checking response times. They want you scared. They want you to drop the case. Easton gently released Gemma. Pack a bag, he told her. You can't stay here. I'm not leaving you, Gemma argued, wiping her tears. The fear was replaced by the same steel she showed in the courtroom. If I run, they win. I'm a prosecutor's nightmare, Easton. Let them come. No, Easton said firmly. This isn't court. There is no judge to sustain an objection. These people will kill you to get to me. Elijah, take her to the safe house in District 4, the one off the books. And you? Elijah asked. I'm going back to work, Easton said. They want a war? I'm going to bring the whole damn army. "Easton, wait," Gemma said, grabbing his arm. "Look at the TV." Easton turned to the smashed television. It was broken, but the sound was still working through the surround system. He grabbed the remote and turned it on, the screen a kaleidoscope of broken pixels. The news anchor's voice filled the room. "Breaking news tonight. Shocking allegations against the FBI agent involved in today's viral arrest. Sources within the police department claim that Agent Easton Oakley has a history of provoking officers and is currently under investigation for misuse of federal funds. We go live to Willow Chambers, attorney for Officer Dalton." Easton stared at the fractured screen. Willow's voice oozed through the speakers. "Agent Oakley is a radical activist hiding behind a badge. He staged this event to incite violence against our brave men and women in blue. We are releasing dashcam footage that shows a very different angle." "They're spinning it," Gemma gasped. "They're editing the footage." "They're trying to destroy my credibility so the grand jury won't indict," Easton said. He looked at Elijah. "Get her safe. I have to find the raw footage before they delete it." "Where?" Elijah asked. "The server room at the 12th precinct," Easton said. Elijah's eyes widened. "You're going to break into a police station?" "I'm not breaking in," Easton said, checking the magazine of his Glock. "I'm executing a search warrant, and I'm taking the whole team." The 12th precinct was a fortress of brick and stone, a place that was supposed to represent safety, but now stood as a monument to corruption. It was 10 p.m. The rain had started, washing the city streets in a slick, oily sheen. 5 black FBI SUVs screeched to a halt in front of the station. Easton stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was wearing his tactical vest now, FBI in bold yellow letters across his chest. He wasn't the suave customer in the suit anymore. He was the hammer of justice. "Move! Move! Move!" Easton commanded. 12 agents flanked him as they marched up the steps. The desk sergeant, a portly man named Higgins, looked up from his coffee, his jaw dropping. "Help you?" Higgins stammered. "Federal warrant," Easton slapped the paper on the high desk. "We are seizing all digital storage devices, server racks, and body cam docking stations. Step away from the desk." "You can't just storm in here," Higgins yelled, reaching for the phone. "I'm calling the chief." "Call the Pope for all I care," Easton said, vaulting over the turnstile. "Miller, secure the lobby. Sanchez, get to the server room in the basement. Don't let anyone touch a keyboard." The station erupted into chaos. Uniformed officers poured out of the bullpen, hands hovering over their guns. It was a standoff, cops versus feds. The tension was palpable, a match waiting to be struck in a room full of gasoline. "Stand down!" Easton bellowed, his voice echoing off the tile walls. "This is a federal operation! Anyone interfering will be charged with obstruction of justice and taken into custody immediately." Most of the cops hesitated. They saw the tactical gear, the assault rifles, the sheer force of the federal government. But one man didn't. Lieutenant Greggs, a massive man with a thick mustache and eyes like flint, stepped forward. He was Dalton's shift commander, and he was dirty. Easton knew it. "You're in my house, Oakley," Greggs growled. "And in my house, we don't take orders from suits." Greggs blocked the hallway leading to the basement. Behind him, 3 other officers formed a wall. "Move aside, Lieutenant," Easton warned. "Make me," Greggs spat. Easton didn't blink. He knew Greggs was stalling. Downstairs, someone was likely wiping the drives right now. "Sanchez, take the breach tool," Easton ordered. "You touch that door, we have a problem," Greggs said, his hand dropping to his weapon. Every FBI agent raised their rifles. Every cop raised their pistols. "Drop it!" Easton screamed. "Do not do this, Greggs. Think about your pension. Think about your family." "I am thinking about my family," Greggs said. "The Blue family." Suddenly, the lights in the precinct flickered and died. The emergency red lights bathed the hallway in blood-colored hues. "What the hell?" Miller shouted. A gunshot rang out. It was loud, deafening in the confined space. Easton felt the wind of the bullet pass his ear. He didn't wait. He tackled Greggs, driving his shoulder into the lieutenant's gut, slamming him to the floor. "Hold fire! Hold fire!" Easton screamed, wresting the gun from Greggs's hand. Chaos erupted. Scuffles broke out in the red gloom. Agents were wrestling cops to the ground. It was a brawl, ugly and desperate. Easton pinned Greggs, cuffing him efficiently. "Who fired? Who fired the shot?" "It wasn't me," Greggs yelled, actually sounding scared now. "Server room, now!" Easton yelled, leaving Greggs on the floor. He sprinted down the hallway, kicking open the door to the stairwell. He raced down the stairs, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He reached the server room door. It was locked. He fired 2 rounds into the lock and kicked it open. Inside, the room was cool, filled with the hum of fans. But sitting at the main terminal was not a cop. It was Kayla Ryder, the live streamer from the jewelry store. She spun around in the chair, her eyes wide with terror. But her hands were on the keyboard. "Step away from the computer," Easton ordered, gun trained on her. I can't," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "They have my sister. They said if I don't delete the footage, they'll kill her." Easton froze. The twists were coming faster than he could count. They had leveraged the witness. They had forced the girl who exposed them to destroy the evidence. "Kayla, look at me," Easton said, lowering his voice but keeping his weapon raised. "Who has your sister?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "A man called me. He sent me a video. She's tied up in a warehouse. Please, I have to delete it." Her finger hovered over the delete all key. "Don't do it, Kayla," Easton said, stepping closer. "If you delete that, the only leverage we have is gone. If you delete that, they kill your sister anyway because she's a loose end. You know that." Kayla's hand trembled. "What do I do?" "Let me help you," Easton said. "Step away. Let me trace the call. Let me find her." "You have 10 seconds," a voice came from Kayla's phone, which was on speaker on the desk. It was a distorted, mechanical voice. "Delete it, or she dies." Easton lunged. He wasn't reaching for Kayla. He was reaching for the keyboard. Kayla screamed and pressed the key. "Deleting." The progress bar appeared on the screen. Easton shoved Kayla aside and jammed his fingers into the tower, ripping the hard drive out of the bay while the machine was still running. Sparks flew. The screen went black. He held the smoking drive in his hand, breathing heavy. He didn't know if he got it in time. He didn't know if the data was corrupted. But he knew one thing. The enemy was listening. Easton grabbed the phone from the desk. "Listen to me," he growled into the receiver. "If you touch one hair on that girl's head, there is no hole deep enough for you to hide in. I'm coming for you." The line went dead. Easton looked at Kayla, who was curled in a ball on the floor, weeping. He looked at the hard drive. He had the evidence, but now he had a hostage situation. And the police were the kidnappers. "Get up, Kayla," Easton said, pulling her to her feet. "We're going to save your sister." He marched her out of the server room, past the subdued cops and the FBI agents holding the line. "Elijah," Easton barked into his comms. "Change of plans. Meet me at the van. Bring the heavy gear." "Where are we going?" Elijah's voice crackled in his ear. "We're going hunting," Easton said, stepping out into the rain. The neon sign of the precinct buzzed and flickered out behind him, leaving the building in darkness. The law had failed. Now it was time for war. The rain battered the windshield of the unmarked tactical van as it sped toward the industrial district. Easton sat in the passenger seat, a laptop open on his knees, cables running to a specialized signal interceptor on the dashboard. In the back, Elijah was checking the chambers of 2 suppressed MP5 submachine guns. "Talk to me, East," Elijah grunted, adjusting his plate carrier. "We got a location?" The call to Kayla's phone was routed through a VoIP server, Easton said, his fingers flying across the keys. "But they made a mistake. They kept the line open for 3 seconds after I hung up. I pinged the cell tower triangulation. They're at the old train yards in District 9. specifically the abandoned maintenance depot. District 9. Elijah shook his head. That's a dead zone. No cameras, no patrols, perfect place to hide a body. Or a hostage, Easton said grimly. Kayla said they sent a video. The background noise. I isolated the audio. There was a specific rhythmic clanking. It's the sound of a loose sheet metal roof panel hitting a stanchion in the wind. I remember hearing that sound during a raid 2 years ago near the depot. I know exactly which building it is. He slammed the laptop shut. They have Kayla's sister Maya. She's 18, a civilian. If we go in there loud, they'll panic and execute her. This has to be surgical. Surgical is my middle name, Elijah said, handing Easton a headset. How many hostiles? Heat signature from the satellite flyover shows 4 distinct bodies standing guard, 1 prone, that's the hostage, and 1 pacing, 6 total. The van skidded to a halt half a mile from the depot. The brothers moved out into the rain, blending into the shadows like ghosts. They didn't look like law enforcement anymore. They looked like hunters. They approached the rusted, corrugated metal structure. The rhythmic clank-clank of the loose roof panel masked their footsteps. Easton signaled to Elijah. You take the east door, I take the roof. Elijah nodded and vanished into the darkness. Easton scaled the side of the building, using a drain pipe for leverage. He reached the skylight, wiping the grime away to peer inside. Below, in the center of the cavernous room, Maya Ryder was tied to a chair, gagged and terrified. Surrounding her were 5 men. They weren't wearing uniforms, but they moved like cops. They held their weapons with practiced ease. One of them, the pacer, was on the phone. Yeah, Willow, it's done. The girl deleted it? No, we haven't heard from the drive team yet. Okay, what about the sister? Understood. No loose ends. The man hung up and turned to the others. Clean it up. Boss says she goes away. Easton's heart hammered. He couldn't wait for Elijah to get into position. He had seconds. He shattered the skylight, dropping a flashbang grenade through the hole before the glass even hit the floor. Boom! A blinding white light filled the warehouse, followed by a deafening concussive blast. Easton dropped through the smoke, rappelling down the line he'd anchored to the roof vent. He landed on top of a shipping container 10 feet above the floor. Federal agent, drop them! Easton roared, his voice amplified by the acoustics of the metal room. The blinded hitmen fired wildly into the air. Bullets sparked off the container near Easton's boots. From the east entrance, the heavy thump-thump-thump of a suppressed submachine gun chugged rhythmically. Elijah breached the door, moving with terrifying speed. 2 of the gunmen went down instantly, incapacitated by shots to their legs and shoulders. Easton raised his rifle, taking aim. He saw the leader, the one on the phone, raising a pistol toward Maya's head. Time slowed. Easton exhaled. Crack. 1 shot. The gun flew out of the leader's hand as the bullet obliterated the receiver of his pistol. The man screamed, clutching his hand. Down! On the ground! Elijah shouted, closing the distance and kicking weapons away from the disorientation suspects. Easton cut his line and dropped to the floor, rushing to Maya. He shielded her body with his own, scanning for more threats. Clear! Elijah called out. The room fell silent, save for the groans of the injured, corrupt officers. Easton pulled the gag from Maya's mouth. She was hyperventilating, her eyes wide with shock. It's okay, Easton said soothingly. I'm Easton. I'm with the FBI. Your sister sent me. You're safe. They said they were police, she sobbed. They used to be, Easton said, standing up and looking at the men zip-tied on the floor. He walked over to the leader who was cradling his shattered hand. It was Lieutenant Greggs' second-in-command, Sergeant Miller. You tried to kill a kid, Miller, Easton said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. For what? To protect a pension? You don't understand, Miller wheezed. Willow. She has files on all of us. She owns us. She doesn't own you anymore, Easton said. He reached into Miller's pocket and pulled out the burner phone. Because you just gave me the link to the top of the chain. The sirens were wailing in the distance now. The backup team Easton had signaled was arriving. "Elijah," Easton said, looking at his brother, "get the girl to the medics. I have a court date to prepare for." The federal courthouse was packed. It was the trial of the century. United States versus Sebastian Dalton, Willow Chambers, et al. 3 months had passed since the raid at the train yard. Easton had spent every waking hour building the case, connecting the dots, following the money. Willow Chambers sat at the defense table, looking impeccable in a white suit. She showed no fear. She was confident that the deleted footage was gone forever. She believed the hard drive Easton had ripped out of the server was corrupted. Easton took the stand. He wore his dress uniform, his face stoic. Gemma Sterling was the lead prosecutor. It was a conflict of interest for her to represent Easton, so she had been appointed as a special prosecutor for the federal case due to her intimate knowledge of the initial event. "Agent Oakley," Gemma said, her voice projecting through the silent courtroom, "can you tell the jury what you found on the hard drive seized from the 12th precinct?" Willow's defense attorney stood up. "Objection. The chain of custody on that drive is questionable. It was ripped from a machine during a power outage." "Overruled," the judge said. "Proceed." "The drive was damaged," Easton said, looking directly at Willow. "The file index was corrupted. We couldn't open the video files." Willow smiled. It was a small, triumphant curve of her lips. "However," Easton continued, "the drive didn't just contain video. It contained the system logs and the audio buffer." Willow's smile faltered. "The 12th precinct installed a new surveillance system last year," Easton explained. "It records audio separately from video to save bandwidth. The delete command Kayla Ryder was forced to execute only wiped the video partition. The audio files were stored on a backup partition." "And what did you find on those audio files?" Gemma asked. "We found everything," Easton said. "We matched the timestamps to the dashcam footage we recovered from the cloud backup of Officer Noble's body cam, which he voluntarily surrendered." The courtroom doors opened. Officer Yale Noble walked in, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. He looked tired, but his head was high. He had turned state's witness. A murmur went through the crowd. "We have audio of Officer Dalton conspiring with Lieutenant Greggs to plant evidence," Easton said. "We have audio of Willow Chambers ordering the intimidation of witnesses, and we have audio of the call to the hitmen at the train yard, traced back to a burner phone purchased by Willow Chambers' assistant." Gemma turned to the jury. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to play Exhibit A." The courtroom speakers crackled. Willow's voice, unmistakable and sharp, filled the room. "Make sure the girl doesn't talk. I don't care how you do it. Make it look like a drug deal gone wrong. Just clean up Dalton's mess." The color drained from Willow's face. She looked at her attorney, who was frantically shuffling papers, realizing they had been outmaneuvered. Easton didn't smile. He just watched her. He watched the realization hit her that the shield she had built, the blue wall of silence, the political connections, the fear, had been shattered by a single, determined truth. "The prosecution rests," Gemma said. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Racketeering. Conspiracy to commit murder. Kidnapping. Deprivation of civil rights. As the judge read the sentence, life in prison without parole for Willow Chambers, 20 years for Dalton, the courtroom erupted. Dalton was weeping, begging the judge for mercy. Willow stood stone-faced as the bailiffs cuffed her hands behind her back. As she was led past the prosecution table, she stopped and looked at Easton. "You think you fixed it?" she whispered. "There will always be another me." "And there will always be another me," Easton replied calmly. "Enjoy your cage, Willow." 6 months later. The city was different. Not perfect, but different. The 12th precinct had been gutted. A new chief of police had been appointed, an outsider with a reputation for transparency. The Oakley reforms were being implemented in departments across the state. Easton stood in front of Whitmore and Company. The glass was repaired. The sun was shining. He adjusted his tie. He was nervous. More nervous than he had been when breaching the warehouse. He walked inside. Noah Whitmore looked up from a tray of watches and beamed. "Easton, good to see you. No. Excitement today, I hope?" "Just the good kind, Noah," Easton smiled. "Is it ready?" Noah reached into the safe and pulled out the velvet box. "Cleaned, polished, and reset. It's better than before." Easton took the ring. It was the same ring he had tried to buy that day. He had kept it as evidence, then reclaimed it. It was a symbol now, not just of love, but of survival. He walked out of the store and crossed the street to the park where Gemma was waiting. She was sitting on a bench, reading a case file, drinking an iced coffee. She looked up as his shadow fell over her. "Hey, stranger," she smiled. "You're late. Agent business?" "Personal business," Easton said. He sat down next to her. "You know, the last time I tried to do this, I ended up in handcuffs." Gemma laughed. "I remember. You were very dashing in your mug shot." "I've been thinking about what Willow said," Easton said, turning serious. "That there will always be another bad cop, another injustice." "She's right," Gemma said softly. "The world is broken, East." "It is," Easton agreed. "But that's why we do what we do. We don't fix the world all at once. We fix the piece in front of us." He slid off the bench, dropping to one knee on the grass. Passers-by stopped, but this time no one called the police. No one assumed the worst. They saw a man in love. "Gemma Sterling," Easton said, opening the box. The diamond caught the sunlight, blindingly bright. "You stood by me when the world turned against me. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. I don't want to fix the world without you. Will you marry me?" Gemma dropped her file. Tears welled in her eyes, happy tears this time. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Easton. 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. As they embraced, a young rookie cop walked by on patrol. He saw the couple, smiled, and tipped his cap. "Afternoon, folks," the officer said. "Afternoon, officer," Easton replied. The cop walked on. Just a normal interaction, just a normal day. It was a small victory. But to Easton, it meant everything. And that is the story of how one corrupt officer picked the wrong man and brought down an entire empire of lies. Easton Oakley proved that while the system might be broken, it isn't unbeatable. It takes courage, it takes truth, and sometimes it takes a gold badge to remind people that no one is above the law. Justice was served, but the fight isn't over. It never is. If you enjoyed this story of karma, justice, and high-stakes action, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. We have a new drama dropping next week involving a Karen, a manager, and a secret CEO that you won't want to miss. What would you have done if you were in Easton's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.